My name is Doug Aspinall. I'm with the Ministry of Agriculture and Food and Rural Affairs in Guelph, Ontario. I've been there since 1981. I started as a soil mapper, and I've been working at various occupations over those 30 years, and returned to detailed soil mapping back in the last 10 years, and have had a big interest in precision agriculture in Ontario. What I was told years ago that the first monitor came into this province in 1992, and it did not have GPS. It was using a radar gun to measure distances and so on and so forth, right? And we had a lot of fun with that. And in 1995, I got involved in a variable rate nitrogen project. And Dr. Gary Katsanowski, who's no longer here in Guelph, came to Guelph at that time, and through some of his research that he was conducting back in those days, he discovered the concept of delta yield. And that was an approach where we were trying to look at the differences between a non-fertilized corn versus various levels of corn. And then he had a way of figuring out, taking that difference and estimating a nitrogen rate that's associated with that difference. So in order to pull that off, we had to measure yield on the go, which meant yield monitors. So we had a number of growers scattered around the province who had yield monitors, and it took quite a while to sort out how to put all that together. And we had lots of problems with GPS and things that didn't work when they're supposed to work and so on and so forth. And from that work, I developed some methods to process the yield data to get at these yield pattern stability or the yield potential index that Michael was talking about. And we finally got that to be fairly sophisticated and got at the patterns, and we used to talk about that quite a bit about, well, here's a way to segment your field and perhaps think about using different rates of inputs. And we've been doing this now since '95. It's been a long time. And back in '95, they were talking about collect data for 3 to 5 years, and we'll have a black box invented by then, and you put in your data, and something will come out that you can use. Well, we're still getting at that, so Mike is coming up with the portal to process data, and of course there's commercial softwares that are out there now. So with me and my yield map, and then I returned to digital soil mapping, and said, well, why don't I just put all this together, and we'll map detailed soil property stuff in farm fields, and we'll associate that with yield, and we'll start thinking about management zones and what we need to make them. And so over the last couple of years, just been trying various things to come up with a way to do that, things that make sense. We recognize, or we should recognize, yield or management zones should be permanent because they're part of the landscape, and they have properties, soil properties that are not expected to change very drastically over time. And as we keep saying, the yield maps, we see patterns that are stable over time, so we're allowed to do this. And so we need to start thinking about, well, how do we, once we get a zone sorted out, how about developing soil sampling strategies using these zone approaches, which means you're now doing some targeting fertility samples, for example, and hopefully that will make much more sense. And with the computer software tools that are now available, we can take our point data, as I was explaining, and make maps for the entire field. So on a continuous basis, so we can plug that into our applicators and have the change on the fly. So it's been a lot of fun. I've got a long way to go. Not so long anymore, but we're getting there.
This video is brought to you by Farms.com.